as you're awakening, you'll start feeling more and more of the suffering of others. You'll start feeling the suffering of your family and friends. And at first, this may be very overwhelming. It might be too much to handle. And what's very common is that because it's so overwhelming, we resist it. We try and avoid it. We run from it. We try and suppress it. It's like we started to really go deep within our own suffering. And started to really feel what's always been there. And that requires a lot of courage. It requires us to be open. And we become more and more sensitive the more open we are. And with this sensitivity, we are able to start perceiving the suffering of our family and our friends. But it's like a new level of suffering. At first, it felt very individual, my suffering. And this is really compassion. Compassion is born out of our own suffering. Because we've felt our own suffering, we now have this compassion to suffer together, compassion. That we start experiencing the suffering of others. But because it's so new to us, especially if you're awakening quickly, you go from resisting and running from your own suffering to then feeling your suffering fully. And then it's like it expands. And then you start feeling the suffering of others, which then can cause you to resist that and run from that. It's very common. So there might be this stage of, again, more suppression, more looking away. It's too painful to see the suffering that's right in front of your eyes. This feeling that you want to distract yourself, that you want to run from it. But really what needs to happen is there needs to be this allowance to allow the suffering to be as it is, to not resist it, to not run from it, to feel this fully. And this is really compassion, that now you're moved by love. Now you start embodying love. Now it doesn't mean that you're trying to change everyone. Because even in that, there's a subtle resistance. That you may be trying to change everything because you're avoiding feeling it fully, because it's so unbearable that you need to come in and try and change it. You need to resist. And it's a very subtle like hold up in the process. That there's still this part of you that doesn't want to see it. Because in reality, it's all you. The suffering is all you as well. And perhaps there might be something that's being projected in what appears to be others that you still don't want to see, that you still don't want to face, that you still don't want to feel. And coming in and trying to change your family, change your friends. Could be seen as a little form of resistance to this greater suffering. Now, just because you're able to feel the suffering of your family and your friends, doesn't mean that you can't do anything. I'm not saying that. It's such a subtle line. There's just no expectation. There's no attachment to this outcome of you need to change them so that they aren't suffering. You're not attached to that idea. You're not attached to that outcome. Sure, there's an effort to alleviate that suffering, to reduce the suffering. But often this is a holdup where it seems like we're awakening to the suffering of the collective. And like I said, it can be a shock. It most likely is going to be a shock. So the natural, the instinctual thing to do is to try and go in and change everything and kind of go full force. Or turn away from it and not see it, distract yourself. It's just that overwhelming. It can be that overwhelming. But what I'm just pointing out in this video is just see it as, well, you've gone into your individual suffering and you allowed that to be. You're open to that, which allows you to feel that fully because you weren't resisting it. You weren't running from it. So then you felt it. And then see it as like a new level. Instead of just on an individual level, you're now seeing it on a universal level. And just, you could say, apply the same practice or process, which is actually non-doing. Just allow it to be. Feel it fully. Don't resist it. Don't run from it. Because this is part of, on the relative level, that inner transformation. A greater capacity to feel, a greater capacity of empathy and compassion and love is, you could say, being born. But as long as we're pushing it away and we're running from it, then it's like holding up that process to develop that capacity. See, with this compassion, yes, there's a form of serving others in a way that can help alleviate the pain, the suffering of so-called others. Yes, but there's no attachment to an outcome. There's no expectation. So look in your experience that is there some expectation that you're expecting them to change? Is there some sort of attachment to the outcome that you need your partner to change, or you need your parents to change, or you need your brothers and sisters to change, or you need your friends to change so that then you'll accept them? So that then they'll see things the way you're seeing them? If you look for this feeling of that you're kind of forcing people to see things from your perspective, and again, it's a form of resistance and rejection to what is. If you're clinging to some idea that everyone should be awakened all right now at the same time, then again, it's just some idea or concept that you're projecting that creates this expectation, this goal, which then actually is going to create more and more suffering. So you see, as long as we do that, there's no liberation from suffering. It's just suffering showing up in like a new color. It doesn't require you to be some hero or savior to save your family or save your friends, because you're going to suffer from that too. You're going to suffer from being the hero. You'll suffer from being the savior. As long as we are resisting what is and trying to seek what is not, then we are suffering. This is suffering. Resistance to what is, trying to escape what is by seeking what is not. This is suffering. And seeing this at this, you could say, level, at this phase in the awakening process, is tricky to see. It's tricky to see. As you awaken, the suffering, the illusion, the delusion, it becomes more and more subtle, requiring more and more clarity. And these are just those subtle nuances that we can get wrapped up in. And just shows that on the relative level in time, that this process is not, it's not final, it's not completed. Obviously, if there's still suffering, it's not final. And like I'm saying, it's so subtle that you might not even recognize it as suffering. That you might feel, I've awakened, but it's more of I'm awakening. It's a process. And just to come to that acceptance that everyone's not going to be going through the same awakening that you are. You might want them to be. Who's going to join me? I want everyone to open their eyes like I'm opening mine. And that's subtle resistance to what is, because what is you're going through something, you're awakening, you're experiencing this transformation, but hey, maybe your parents aren't, maybe your wife isn't, maybe your husband isn't, maybe your friends aren't. And that's what is. And trying to force what is to your idea of what is not, to your idea that everyone needs to be experiencing this awakening process right now, that they need to join you, then that's going to create suffering. So I forget who this question is inspired by. I was speaking about it in text with someone and felt like I needed to explain it a little further in a video. So whoever asked it, thanks for your question, and hopefully this helps. I'll see you in the next one.